Selah was my third gospel-stroke Christian contemporary album, all of which were preceded by a string of pop singles in the 80s that had varying degrees of success. The biggest one being Eyes of the Beholder, which was released twice, first in 1984 and then again in 1988. I'd branched into gospel because of my ever-growing personal Christian convictions and my involvement as a praise and worship leader at Christian Family Church on the East Rand of Johannesburg. By the time 1993 rolled around, I was very driven at the time to do an album with a decent budget, and I had a definite idea of what I wanted to call the album. Recording contracts in South Africa in those days were very few and far between, particularly for Christian artists, and as a result, my first two attempts, When the River Runs Dry and Worship Choice, both were self-funded. I managed to sell the idea of the album firstly to the guy who was eventually going to produce it, Bernie Miller, and finally to Rampant Records chief Greg Neft, who agreed to fund the project with a budget of 50,000 Rand, a lot of money for a South African Christian project back then. The team was going to be Bernie producing, with longtime collaborator Nigel Giddon co-producing and doing some of the guitar work, and Clout Keys lady Glenda Miller, Bernie's wife at the time, doing vocal arrangements. The rest of the team were going to be some of the best session musos in the country, as well as myself on guitar, keyboards and MIDI sequencing. So there we were at Rontel Studios in Bryanston, Johannesburg, in early 1994, getting ready to put down on tape what we hoped would be a worthy offering to the Lord, and also a blessing to His church and to the world. The album opens with Glory, Glory, oddly enough the very last track we recorded. It was a song Bernie had written and was something of an afterthought actually. Greg Neft had come in from the record company when we'd actually finished the album, had listened to it, and it consequently just trashed it, saying it needed more production, and this was wrong with it, and that was wrong with it. So we obliged by adding bits and pieces, rearranging some of the other songs, and then Bernie had this brilliant thought of adding Glory, Glory, which turned out to be one of the most popular songs on the album. I had to do a bit of lyric guiding for Bernie on this one, as the heart was there, but it was a little bit of track theologically. He and Glenda came up with that amazing contrapuntal choir part at the end of the song, very African sounding, and beautifully done. Really great idea. Open Up and Let Jesus In was a song also in a kind of a quasi-African style, written by Bernie and his business partner Ron Bones Brattel, who sadly is no longer with us. Ron was an amazing musician and producer who paid his dues in Circus, Clout and Hotline. They were kind of all very, very big South African acts in the 70s and 80s. As this was going to be a duet, I only had one person in mind, my friend Lionel Peterson. South African child star and very much sought after session vocalist and gospel star in his adult life. I might mention here that I had to do some serious singing to match Lionel's energy and interpretation, and I surprised myself at some of the notes I got. I suppose I should point out here that a very patient Bernie had me dig very deep to come up with some of the goods vocally, whereas Lionel just came in, nailed his part pretty much in one take, much to my embarrassment. But yeah, it's a good track, and I enjoyed doing it with him. Somebody Loves You. Well, this is the first self-penned song on the album, and one of 4 that I'd written specifically for this album. There were other originals, but they were a few years older. The second verse of the song opens with the line, "And you who feel that no one's on your side." This was originally meant to be, "And you who are contemplating suicide," and I was asked by the record company to remove it as it was deemed too controversial. In retrospect, I don't think it was that controversial, but if left in, would probably have added a heaviness to the song that was in contrast to its more upbeat and hopeful message. I myself came up with a brass hook in the chorus, which I thought worked really well, and apparently Bernie did too.